take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to Life in Red.
So it's been a while, but we've covered a lot of stuff, especially pertaining to COVID, the mental health effects of it in media. We kind of took a break. But as we're going into the fall, kids are going back to school. People are starting to get worried about a second wave. I think one of the most overlooked topics, and it's something I've talked about on a couple episodes, is not only the mental health impact of the pandemic moving forward, but the effect on the economy, on business. So today I'm really happy to be joined by my good friend Mike Wood. He's an entrepreneur, business partner for Ottawa Special Events here in Ottawa, and now turned lobbyist, among a lot of other things. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, Ryan. How are you, man?
Not too bad, thank you. I'm really curious. So, like, right off the bat, because I think a lot of people, and we were talking this off mic, that as especially young people, we don't understand business all that well. And when we see restaurants, the events business, all these places going out of business, we don't understand the impact of it, the true impact of it. So right off the bat, I just want to just get that right in the open. When we see all these business closing, and God forbid we go into a second lockdown and, even more start closing, like, what does that mean to Canada, to the States, to the economies? Like, what does that potential impact perhaps look like?
Sure. So let me start off by saying thank you for having me on. I truly appreciate it and giving me a voice to express for so many. One of my best friends owns a business in Ottawa, and he puts it this way, and I think it will maybe make people realize. So 10 years ago, September 23rd, I lost my mom. And while your friends, go through that process in life, people can empathize, they can be there for you, they can support you. But until you go through that process yourself, it's impossible to understand it. And so, having said that, kind of bringing it back to the topic at hand, if you haven't lost your paycheck during the pandemic, if you haven't known someone that's gotten COVID, while you can empathize and you can sympathize, it's impossible for you to understand the impacts that are on small business owners and the employees that have been laid off and still not rehired. So the overall impact of what we're seeing, and I know we have about an hour here, Ryan. We could might be midnight. We're still rolling tape here.
All the issues there, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But the thing is that you got to look at things in context, and everybody's life kind of dictates their thoughts on different things and what they've experienced and so on and so forth. For your listeners are like, we don't understand how businesses are suffering so hard. I want everybody to think about this one thing. Everybody's mandated home. Everybody's working from home. I'm working from home. You're working from home. And what happens to the dry cleaner in that corporate tower downtown? What happens to that person that's running a sandwich store in a business park and all of their customers, by no fault of their own, have been sent home? And let's say your sandwich place is in the Saint Laurent business park and you live in Canada. Well, chances are you're not going to go, regardless of how good something is. You have your children at home. You've got all of this where you can't just pick up and go to Saint Laurent to get that sandwich you want. So as more and more people vacate the government buildings, the corporate towers, and are working from home, the more the coffee shop in the corner has no customers, the more the cafeteria person that owns this little cafeteria in the corporate center, they don't have their customers anymore. So just imagine that you were in that position and you basically, figuratively, somebody pulled the fire alarm, everybody went running out of the building. But the thing is, this time they never came back. And that's one of the major problems that small business is facing right now.
I know you've been meeting, you've been on the phone and having meetings with ministers and people of, multiple layers of government, other business owners. You put out a fantastic op-ed, two op-eds actually in the Ottawa Citizen, which
Thank you.
would share. But it really opened my eyes to all the different things. Like, basic, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, but businesses were told to close down. Everyone's doing their part for, the public health good. But really, businesses didn't really receive any support in terms of, keeping the business afloat. I'm unsure of any. I think there was a loan program from what I understand. There's a wage subsidy. But as we've all been told to stay home and, I think a lot of people are under the impression now that we're in stage 3 here in Canada, like businesses are opening up, that like, oh, everything's back to normal again for businesses. That's really not truly the case. And it's in the op-ed, but I'll let you explain better here. Like, businesses are still under, a lot of businesses, especially, customer service, are still under tremendous amounts of pressure and could still potentially lose their business, even though we've unlocked some of the limitations that were set on them.
Sure. So I don't really view it as phase 1, 2, and 3. I view it as phase 1A, 1B, 1C, because we haven't had these massive reopenings, right? And then I would picture phase 3 being, okay, we're virtually back to normal. So you're right that there has been some support. That support did come in what they call the Canadian Emergency Benefit Account, the CEBA loan. And the problem with the CEBA loan was, and Ryan, I'll be honest with you, the money flowed quickly, and these programs were developed quickly because they knew there was an emergency situation at hand, and that, not only businesses were going to be financially devastated, but so were just families, right? So that, the CERB came out, the CEBA loan, like we're talking about. But the CEBA loan, the word loan is an issue with me. This was not my fault. I didn't do anything to cause this shutdown. So why am I borrowing money to hang on? The other scenario is that it was a blanket $40,000 loan. So a business that has $1 million operating costs versus a business that has $50,000 operating cost have two totally, completely different needs, obligations, so on and so forth. Bigger rent space, bigger product acquisition, so on and so forth. And the problem that, I see with the CEBA loan is that it should have been on a sliding scale. So that if you were between X and Y in terms of your operating costs, then you were given this amount. If you were between A and B, you were given this amount. And while I understand the government did try to put in something quickly, $40,000 is a blanket solution nationally, because forget the fact that businesses have different obligations. A business in just up the road, let's call it Belleville or something, has completely different obligations in Vancouver, Toronto, Ottawa, the large cities. So that should have all been done on a sliding scale. The wage subsidy is decent. They've extended it, which is good. And they've extended the CEBA loan application as well, too. But, the thing is that we're looking at this right now saying, okay, well, the $40,000 came and went. I was on a radio interview today and I was with somebody, and they said that $40,000 lasted them 17 days. Mm-hmm. That was it, based on their operating costs. And it was a loan. So then there's the FedDev, the Regional Relief Fund, which was put together. I applied for that June 27th. I had heard nothing. There's no mechanism in place for me to call and say, hi, I'm just checking on the status of my application. Just goes to a call center. So because I'm a little bit aggressive, I don't want to say the word, that's not the right word, but I ended up looking up the FedDev in LinkedIn. I found a lady that worked there. I took her name. I put it into the government electronic directory service, found her phone number, and I called her and I said, listen, this is where I'm at. I applied on June 27th, so 2 months ago. I've heard nothing. And she says, okay, I'll look into it. At the same time, I called an MP, which I'm sure will lead into the next little bit of this. And I said, look, I need some assistance. I need somebody from your team to make an inquiry phone call. So with those two things happening, I did get an email yesterday saying your application has been received. Well, thank you. And that they're overwhelmed with applications and they'll get back to us shortly. So, there's other things too that need to happen. There needs to be no fault bankruptcy. So that one of the big things that we're going to notice and you're going to hear more and more about in the media is that even if a business protected itself behind a corporation, okay, which many do. So, this word corporation is an ugly word to some, but Ottawa Special Events is a corporation where that's just how we're structured. And so we took out loans pre-COVID on equipment to grow our business, grow the economy, and they have personal guarantees attached to them. So what that means is if the business fails by no fault of my own, any other small business owner in Ottawa, across Canada, the banks are going to call personal guarantees on these loans. Mm. And then you start looking at people losing their homes and their assets, as per my op-ed, and that is a very, very real thing.
Yeah, no, and definitely want to get to all of that because one of the most striking things from that op-ed was if the business was to go bankrupt, that all the it would affect you personally. And I don't think a lot of people realize that you've sunk, whether it's equity or put liens on your house or whatever to start your business and your dream, that all of this is now basically can be taken back and you couldn't have done anything. And going back to I know you didn't say the stages, but as we're in September. So I know the student loan freeze is coming to an end. CERB is coming to an end and transitioning. As you mentioned, the loans were transitioning. And I know all that stuff is going, everything's transitioning to more back to what it was a little bit before pre-COVID. Restaurants, they're still not at capacity. Movie theaters aren't at capacity. Gyms aren't at capacity. Stores have to, people are still, I think a lot of people forget we're still under a state of emergency, and the recommendation is to stay home if you don't need to go out. It's a little loose on that. So when you put that up, and I was just reading through, I'm like, even as all this assistance is ending, and I don't know if they announced any subsequent help or not, it's still businesses are still going to be struggling, but then now all the support is pretty much dried up. Until we truly open back up at capacity where everything was back to normal, these businesses are still going to need help because they base their budgets and their operating on what it was before, when they could actually get the amount of customers that they were supposed to get theoretically.
100%. And with this being the start of September, what's due the first of the month? Mortgages and rent. And the thing is that the Minister of Finance yesterday and the Minister of Small Business made no announcement about the SECRA program, which is the rent relief program, being continued. This is going to lead to a crushing amount of bankruptcies. Mm. So, and they were saying that they were aware of the rent, but although the program had to be redesigned, to give the landlord the power to decide that they were going to opt in or opt out was not right. I was having a conversation. Somebody said, wow, they're losing money. And I said, I get it. But they were asked to lose 25%, which is a profit margin. I've lost 92. So I don't have that much sympathy for the landlords. I think the landlords that didn't choose to, or did choose, chose not, that's what I'm trying to say, chose not to participate, made a big error. I think we're going to see a lot of vacant buildings, and the cost to do the tenant improvements and so on and so forth, and to get people back in. Who's going to rent a space right now? And who's going to rent a space even a year from now? I'm questioning, who's going to start a small business a year from now? You'd have to, just be an absolute animal to decide that you're going to run that risk. And more power to you. If you decide that's what you want to do, I'm all for you. But, realistically, who's going to do this? So, the rent program not being extended is an issue. They need to revise it, but at least, because Ryan, we talked quickly, before off air, we'll call it, about mental health and the mental health crisis and impact on small business owners. is going to be insurmountable. I'm sure that my family would say that I've had my moments in the last 6 months where they were concerned, and I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not afraid of that, but I've reached my breaking point 3-4 times, like once a month almost, once every 6 weeks I hit a wall, and I'm just like, I'm frustrated. And so I'm not the only one, and there's people in a lot worse predicaments in that department than I am. I've got a wonderful support network, but at the end of the day, regardless of that support network, I still have my moments.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a fantastic point. And everyone always cares about mental health until
there's a crisis.
Yeah, right. And then it's like, oh well, you got to take care, whatever, all that stuff. But it's a great point, and it just you hear it everywhere that this was no fault. Like, no one did anything wrong. You're following regulations and public health, and yet you're losing everything. Some people are losing everything, and there's of course you'd be stressed. That's why we were kind of joking, but that you're a little gray, but you've kept your hair and still looking like you still got some adequate sleep. But I think about myself, and I'm incredibly lucky, even though my industry of radio is hurting, obviously with businesses not being able to advertise, that I've been able to keep my job. My company's done a fabulous job of taking care of us as best they can. And I still found myself stressed. I still found myself having mental relapse, really hard moments. And truly, I had nothing on the line. Now that goes into a whole other topic I won't get into, but when you think of stress, people think of work stress, and they get stressed because they get an email, or they get in trouble from their boss, or a fight with a coworker, how worked up people can get over that. Amplify that by 1 million as an estimate, when your whole livelihood, everything you've worked for how many years it's now being taken away, and there's literally nothing you could do about it. I just want to put that in people's minds, how much, of course, that's going to impact people's mental health. That is the wildest thing almost that could happen.
100%. And again, like I said off the top, it comes down to people can empathize and sympathize, but until you're staring down this situation at hand, it would be almost impossible for people to understand where we're at.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them for that. It's just, our perception is our reality, right? And if this is not your reality, then it's hard to understand.
Yeah. So I'm going right back to, when we first started hearing of COVID. I know you've been talking to a lot of businesses now. You've been having roundtables. I'm curious. So one of the quote unquote, left-wing arguments when it comes to all this, or socialist arguments, or however you want to put that box around it, but it's, well, businesses should have been prepared for this, that they should have had money in the bank. They should have, had emergency funds, all that, those types of arguments. So, I'm curious from yourself, your personal perspective, or, other business owners that you've talked to, when COVID was first announced or became sort of a threat, what was your initial thought about that? Was there a worry? Did you even think that, okay, now I'm going to have to pivot my business, that the closing down was even maybe a possibility? What was kind of that initial reaction before we went into full lockdown?
So it's funny. I had this thought the other day, and I remember at night watching, the nighttime news, the 11 o'clock news, about Wuhan. And there's certain images about Wuhan that stick out in my mind. One, how empty it was when they locked everything down, and not a car on the roads. And they were showing these images, and I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my God, thank God that's not here. And then I remember this other one where it still kind of makes me smile just based on the two different generations. But there was an older lady, a senior citizen, in a park and in China, and this drone came in and hovered in front of her and told her, you got to go back inside. And I was thinking to myself, can you imagine if we were ever in a position here where a drone had to fly over and tell you to get back in your house? And we weren't that far from that. And I don't think we still are that far from that. So, and I remember thinking to myself, there's no way that COVID's going to come across. I don't know why. Listen, there's no playbook for this. This is our first time experiencing this. And I don't think anybody could have predicted this. Mm-hmm. So, the thing being is on March 15th, I had a weird feeling that the whole city was about to shut down. I've had a weird feeling the country was about to shut down. So I called a city councilor friend of mine and I said, is this warranted? And he said, I would start calling MPs and MPPs right now. So I did that. And then that took my whole life in a completely different direction, which we can chat about. But, this is, again, like you said, this is no fault of anybody's. Everybody respected the rules that were put in place, although flawed. The one thing, Ryan, that if I'm mad over something, I'm mad over the fact that Walmart was not roped off for just groceries and pharmacy. I'm mad that Costco was not roped off for just groceries and pharmacy and true essentials. That pair of sandals or whatever, to me, is not an essential thing that you needed. And so when it comes to the people, one thing too, and I just want to touch on this quick, is that we look at McDonald's, okay? Let's say McDonald's did suffer. And everyone's like, oh, it's been corporate Canada, blah, blah, blah. That's somebody that has invested in a franchise and they bought that business. So in some ways, McDonald's is still a small business to somebody. So, McDonald's being fast food, it wasn't hurt. But, the thing is that my friend owns Trade Secrets at the Rideau Center, and no Ottawa U students. The LRT is still not working properly. No tourists, and the mall was closed. And so there's nobody down there. So even though we look at Trade Secrets on the wall as, wow, well, who cares? It's a big American corporation or whatever the case is. It's not. It is somebody in our community that owns that business, put their life savings into it because they had a passion for something. And this is where we're at. I know we've kind of I've deviated all through this. But these are there's so many things to consider. And, on the flip side of it, I got a message from somebody the other day saying they're concerned about the national debt and we should be focusing on training businesses and retraining businesses to pivot. I value everybody's opinion, but I rent stages, I rent speakers, I rent microphones. How can I pivot? I rent tables and chairs. How can I pivot? If somebody needs those items at a hospital, I will deliver it and I will do whatever I can, but I can't reposition myself when I rent event equipment into PPE. This chair is not PPE. And some people did pivot into PPE, and there's a lot of great companies like Turlin Construction that did just that. And I'm so happy for them that they were able to do that. I would say 99% of businesses serve one type of client, right? Or have one set product, and nobody had money to start bringing in other things to try and pivot their businesses. Ottawa Special Events doesn't say plexiglass to people. It says events. So, there's so many different sides of every coin, but I think the pressing one is that small business employs over 8 million people in Canada. And if it was any other industry, airline that employed 8 million people, an engineering firm out of Montreal that employed 8 million people, I think we would have seen a different reaction from the federal government.
It's a good point. Yeah. You see it a lot more in the States, but how many industries get bailouts? And from what I understand, I mean, I don't know much about it, but just talking to people on the podcast and friends who own businesses, how hard it is to even operate a small business in Canada, before all this, even starting with all the, regulations and taxes and everything in it, never easy to begin with.
Right.
And I do want to bring up the point, because Ottawa Special Events, especially, for people who listen in Ottawa, probably know it, but people who listen outside of it, because I just found out I have a ton of listeners in Virginia for some reason. Don't know what's going on in Virginia, but
awesome.
My friends in Virginia, when you think about charities, when they have events or runs or walks for a cure, all that stuff, like they have a stage, they have a microphone, they have speakers, where do you get that from? Like a business like yours. And I know through my industry and the people I've talked to that you've been very generous with helping different sorts of charities and different sorts of events throughout the city, that kind of like makes the city, that makes the community, just that brings us all together in certain ways, all these different events that we go and have fun with, so when you think, okay, well, it's just an events business. What if we lost that? And what if we lost all our events businesses? What's the big deal? Well, then, think of everything once we get back to normal, when people want to hold an event and they have to buy all their own equipment and stuff. That, again, it goes back to your point, which was a great one, that unless you're in it, it's hard to empathize truly with what's going on. But I did want to bring that point up, because you were known throughout the city for all the work you do. So there is a great need for things like that.
I appreciate that. And when the cancer charity comes to us and says they have $1,000 to spend on what would have been a $5,000 order, and we sit there, we look at the cause, we look at who's behind it, and we say, we'll do that, we'll help you. Who's going to sponsor these charities? I feel very badly. I had a charity reach out. They were looking for a donation and a ticket purchase, and that's not in our cards right now.
Yeah.
So where we normally would have bought it. And again, this is not for me to say, look at all the wonderful things we've done. But we created something called Keep Ottawa Warm. So we've got 10,000 people on a mailing list, and then we've got probably 50,000 on social media on all the channels. And so I was getting off, for your Virginia listeners, you'll just have to picture this in your head. So I was getting off Bronson, the Queensway. I was heading eastbound, get off at Bronson. So I got off the freeway, and at the corner there was a gentleman. It was February, and he asked me if I had any money, or asked me if I had any clothes or food or anything. And I said, I don't. Had to be about minus 35 Fahrenheit. And he said, I'm going to freeze to death tonight, man. I'm like, I drove away with that as, okay, I have to do something. I can't let all these people freeze to death. Granted, there's shelters in town. We've got great social services. Some people can't access them, don't want to access them, whatever the case is. So the next day I created something called Keep Ottawa Warm. And I put out to all of our customers, if you have winter clothing that you would like to donate, please drop it off at Ottawa Special Events. So we've done this for the last 4 years. Over the 4 years, we collected over 10,000 pieces of winter clothing. We didn't give it to a charity. We went to the shelters directly ourselves, and we dropped them off ourselves. We didn't want them going to a thrift store, although they play an important role in the ecosystem as well, too. We went and we hand-delivered them to the people that desperately needed them. We went out on the street. We handed out people that were sleeping on the street. We said, here, take these jackets, take these sweaters. You're going to need this tonight. It's freezing out here. At Christmas time every year, we teamed up with Costco. And the last time they did it with us, they gave us 180 frozen turkeys for free. And when we went to pick them up, they said, here's a $500 gift card. Go buy some veggies while you're here. Mm-hmm. And so it was all free. We took it all down to the Mission for Men, the homeless shelter for men in Ottawa. And so these are the things that small business does. And we do it without any fanfare, without any announcement. And so, while, people are wondering, what they can do to help, we're the ones that are generally leading the charge on that help. And, one of the things I remember we put out too at that point, we had so many winter clothes one year. We said, look, if you are struggling, you can come and pick up winter clothes. You can go through, we have them on all of our coat racks. We rent coat racks. So all the clothes are there, all the boots are there. And a woman called and she said, what's the catch? And I said, there's no catch. And she says, I can just come and look through clothing for my children and for free. And I said, ma'am, if you need it, you are welcome to come. Nobody will ask you a question, nothing. So she came and she was crying and oh my goodness. But, and the other thing that we did too as well is, we have a cotton candy machine and a popcorn machine, among other things. And we went to Canadian Tire on Clyde for years. And the week before Christmas, we gave out free cotton candy and popcorn, hopefully for a donation. And then, so the one year we raised $4,000 in cash. I gave the $4,000 in cash to my staff. And I said, go on a shopping spree and buy all the toys for Toy Mountain. And so the staff loved it. They each got $500-600 and there's videos on YouTube of them going through the store. It was the Price is Right, man. They were just wheeling their carts and they were so excited. So we filled a full truck with toys for kids that are needed. But, small business, we're not millionaires, and we're part of the community ecosystem that tries to give back as much as we can. And generally, I would say most of us put ourselves second, third, or fourth. Ryan, the one advantage, and it's crazy saying that word, to the pandemic, was that this was my first Canada Day off in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I would start at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would get home at 3 o'clock in the morning, a 22-hour day, and then sleep a couple hours and go back out. So it's been able to let me push this giant reset button on my life too, as to what's important, not be out working, 14, 15, 20 hours a day. And, it's not healthy. And so I've really been able to sit back, look at everything that I've gained, looked at everything that I've lost. And if I truly looked myself in the mirror and said, am I any further ahead in 10 years? I think the answer would be no.
Right. We've referenced it a couple times, but you made the transition to Lobbyist. So how did that go about? What was that decision like to kind of make this transition while you're fighting for your business?
It's funny that you use that word.
Which
because
one?
Lobbyist. So here's where I'm at. So I'm not sure how much you know about my background, but for 10 years I worked in the music business, and I was a touring guitar player. And I'll just show your audience this. So I have there we go. Over here I have my wall of fame with all the different people that I worked with. So there's Casey Kasem and I. If you're a radio guy, so you'll know who Casey is with America's Top 40.
Velvet Revolver. Yeah.
The soup Nazi from Seinfeld, Larry Thomas. And so anyways, that was my life. That's the only thing that I really knew. And then, so the event transition really wasn't that much of a change, right?
Right.
And so going back to what I was saying earlier, when I spoke to the city councilor and I said, what do I do? What's my move here? And he said, you got to start calling and writing your MPs and your MPPs. So I was like, my dad, I love my father. But my father will call me and he's like, so I wrote a letter to Justin Trudeau today. I'm like, oh, God, this is a waste of time. It's like, I sent one to Bill Morneau and I really let him have it. I'm like, Dad, do not say you know me. This is crazy. So anyways, I became my father overnight. So I sent this email to Catherine McKenna, who's the Minister of Infrastructure, especially for your American friends. So I kind of view Catherine McKenna, now she's been kind of promoted again, but I viewed her at the time as number 4 in Canada. You had the Prime Minister, you had the Finance Minister, you had Chrystia Freeland, who is now the current Finance Minister, and then you had Catherine McKenna, and she's that high. So I sent her an email. I sent one to Lisa MacLeod, who's the Minister of Tourism for Ontario, and another one, I can't remember who. But within an hour, and I requested a meeting, and within an hour, I got a note back from Catherine McKenna saying, I will meet with you over Zoom. And I was like, maybe Dad's not so crazy. So so I met with Catherine McKenna, and then that one phone call, she was so kind, she was so empathetic, whether whether you're a liberal or a conservative or somewhere in the middle or on the far sides of either, she was wonderful. And so I said to myself, well, maybe dear old dad's been right. So I sent a note to Mona Fortier, who's the minister of the middle class. And she got back to me. She says, I'll meet with you. I'm like, hopefully. So then Pierre Poilievre ended up calling me, Marie-France Lalonde, Bill Morneau's parliamentary secretary got hold of me, and he said, I will meet with you as well, too. So the first two was myself and the Ottawa Board of Trade. So the other ones, I just said, okay, if this is where we're going, then all small business owners need to have a voice, like straight up. So this term lobbyist, I had a woman come at me on Facebook and start referring to me as a lobbyist, and she wasn't overly friendly with me about it.
There's a negative connotation to it for sure.
Yeah, just and she said, I had to register myself. I'm like, what do you mean register myself? I'm just trying to save my small business and help my friends. And then so what I ended up doing to protect myself was I did register as a federal lobbyist. I did register as a provincial lobbyist because there are fines involved, and God knows I don't need one more problem in my life if somebody deems I've been lobbying, like a guy hosting a podcast, but whatever. So anyway, so I registered, and then I've met with the Minister of Small Business twice for Ontario, and I got a note from Pierre Poilievre's guy who said, there is a standing committee on finance hearing on the impacts of COVID, and I think you should testify before the House of Commons. Again, you saw the wall. That is one life, and this is the new life that I've got going on. So this is nothing. I didn't even know that people could testify.
Yeah.
So, and just at non-politicians, I thought that, anyways, I've learned a lot. So I said, sure, I'll do it. So I testified June 2nd. Before the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance via Zoom, just like this. And then that started to snowball, and then media started calling me like crazy. And they wanted to support me, which is amazing. And so I have met with countless ministers. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Oh, and then after the House of Commons, Wayne Easter, who's the chair of the Federal Finance Committee, agreed to host a roundtable with me, which I thought was a pretty cool thing. The shadow minister, the critic of Mary Ng, the Minister of Small Business, James Cumming, he agreed to do a roundtable with Ottawa small business owners and myself. And so, it kind of snowballed, and then I got this phone call, or an email actually, from the Minister of Small Business for Ontario from his office saying that they're doing a study on the impacts of COVID-19 on small business with Queen's Park and their finance committee. And he said, I'd love for you to apply. So I thought to myself, wow, now the government's asking me to appear as a witness. So I did. And my question to him, and really my only question was, can I put this out to other small business owners in Ottawa? And he said, absolutely, bring as many people as you can. So I know for sure that I brought 18 people. And it's funny, Ryan, I'm sitting there at 44 with my Gibson Les Paul hanging on the wall from my touring days, watching the Ontario Parliamentary Channel like I'm watching the greatest documentary, as if I'm watching the Michael Jordan documentary. I'm watching everybody testifying before Queen's Park, and I'm thinking to myself, there's no way this is what my life has become.
Yeah.
And I'm PVRing it so I can go back and rewatch people, and I'm like, oh my God, my father. So anyways, I did that. I testified before Queen's Park on August 17th. And then so many people that too, like Glenn Shackleton from The Haunted Walk, he did it. Paul Goulet from Little Ray's Reptiles, he did it. And all the way down to smaller businesses, but Carla Briones, who owns Global Pet Foods franchise again. There's that word franchise again. Mm-hmm. Everybody sees Global Pet Foods. Well, that's a woman in our community, an immigrant entrepreneur that started that business, bought the franchise, And this is where she's at now. She also owns a Freshie, same deal. So, as much as we want you to support Ryan's Sandwich Stop over, in your mind, this franchise, this corporate conglomerate, no, you're supporting somebody that owns and put their life savings into that corporate conglomerate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, it's escalated to a point where I allegedly have a meeting with Christian Freeland's right-hand man. And, the cool thing is I think I've been, I'll use the word successful in arranging these meetings, is that I've been, in my opinion, kind, lucid. It's not a screaming match. It is a sit-down discussion about the crisis we are in. And I've only had two that will remain nameless for now, that have not agreed to meet with me. They sent in their their employee to meet with me. One did. The other one had an employee call me. We chatted for a couple minutes, and they just said, we will not meet. I'm like, great. So, but I'm not here to focus on the negative. The scenario being is that everybody's taking the time. I was out for a walk on Sunday night at 9:00, and Bill Morneau at the time, his chief of staff, had his right-hand man send me a text saying, hey, Elder Marquez thinks that we should talk. It was at 9:00 at night on a Sunday. He goes, are you available tomorrow? I'm like, absolutely. So I think I've built a reputation that I'm here to have an honest and open discussion. No finger pointing. That's not how I do things. It's just like, this is what we need. This is how we're going to survive. Please help. Right.
So it sounds like you've been, working at it for a while, very successful in the meetings. So I know the goal of these meetings is to improve the situation, obviously. I'm just curious of this whole process, because obviously nothing new has really changed. Is it a lot of just talk, look at us, we're meeting with them, we're doing our job? Is it actually there's being actionable steps being taken? Because I know the whole government bureaucracy is very complicated and cumbersome, but I'm just curious, do you feel satisfied that after you meet with them that a real change can be made, or is it at least the process is really starting to pick up?
So that's a great question. A lot of people either ask me that question, or they send me a message saying you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Or they send me a message saying thanks for everything. It's that's kind of where I'm at. And so here's where I'm at. I am one voice with a big supportive following right now, of probably 10 across the country. So I'd say I'm in the top 10 influencers of politics. And I'm looking at the Canadian Federation of Independent Business being there. I'm looking at certain chambers of commerce, the Calgary Chamber of Commerce yesterday over the rent program on Twitter. They were devastated. There's somebody in New Brunswick yesterday that, got the CBC for New Brunswick to cover the story, which is great. There's two. I'll answer the question two ways. One, on June 24th, that was the meeting with Wayne Easter, who was the chair of the Finance Committee. And my thing to him at the time, because the SECRA program was going to run out then, I said, Wayne, what are we going to do about the rent program? Because you cannot not extend that program and have businesses go back July 1, Canada Day, and lose their businesses. It doesn't make sense. And so I, rightfully or wrongfully, I believe that conversation with all of the Ottawa small business owners on there saying the same thing got an extension of the SECRA program, or at least was a voice in it, the last voice they needed, whatever the case, wherever that fit in. I believe that piece of the puzzle was part of that phone call. So moving forward, I agree that, there hasn't been that much forward momentum. It hasn't been that much change. Although the CEBA loan, which was the last day was to apply, was August 31st, that was extended. So I do believe that while it's not happening tomorrow, while it's not happening a week from now, it happens a month from now, whatever the timeline is, I think that it's very important that people have a voice, they express that voice, And I would rather, Ryan, if everything collapses, I could live with myself knowing that I did everything I possibly could than to say if I'd only got involved. And, the thing is it's funny. I'm at the point now where I'm meeting with opposition. So my first thought was go after the political party that's in power. So I've gone after the opposition, or the opposition's come after me, which is a good thing, saying, what can we do to help pressure the government for change? So after my testimony on the 17th before Queen's Park, Joel Harden, who is the NDP MPP for Ottawa Centre, alive, this guy has been amazing. We've spoken 3 times since. He's like, how can I help? What can I do? Where can I apply the pressure? And so that's where I'm at now. Like, I've met with everybody. I've tried to have second meetings. I've been turned down, truthfully, saying you've already met once. And my argument there, dude, is that I met with X, Y, and Z April 15th. We are now September. Everything was changing so quickly that, yes, I get it that we met in April, but every month, every week, every day is a different situation with COVID. So I would like to see them meet with me again over the programs that have been implemented. And again, I'm not ungrateful. I know that programs were implemented quickly and everybody's doing the best that they can, but there needs to be some revisions here.
Right. So that's a good segue into my next question. What you've talked to so many different business owners, and everyone has their own kind of diverse set of needs and everything. But in summary, just from what you've gathered, what would have, if you were in charge of implementing these protections for small business, what would you have done, and what would you institute moving forward to ensure that the businesses that are still open continue to be open, and especially if we do hit a second wave where we have to put in more restrictions and close up a lot more?
Sure, and there's a couple things I want to touch on, if that's okay, because that spawned other thoughts that I had that I was going to mention before. So you're saying that some people are wondering why we weren't prepared for this.
Yeah,
we actually were. And what ended up, and by that, I mean, we all paid into business interruption insurance. And business interruption insurance is to protect us if we cannot operate. Okay. So the problem being is that the insurance companies all decided that a pandemic is not covered under business interruption insurance. So that's one of the biggest things where, I paid tens of thousands of dollars in to cover it. Now, because I try and look at both sides of the coin with everything. Business interruption insurance covers you if your business burns down, floods, whatever the case is. And I can look at it and I can say, okay, it's not just my business that's on fire right now. It's every single business across Canada. So how are the insurance companies supposed to cover that? So I made a suggestion to my insurance broker that just give me back my premiums that I paid. I paid tens of thousands of dollars in premiums. This will at least cover me for a little bit. The answer was no, and I've had no claims. So the insurance companies have been hiding behind a force majeure clause, which is something I brought up at Queen's Park, and I just said it's unacceptable. If you look at the Ottawa Citizen today, this is unbelievable. So insurance companies now have stopped offering policies to businesses. And one of the businesses that the insurance company dropped, you're sitting down there, bud? You ready for this?
Yeah.
They dropped the city of Ottawa. And so the city of Ottawa had to turn around and get a new insurance, and it doubled. So I'll send you the link. So it's not just Mike Wood who owns a small business. It's not just Tim Smith that owns a business and Mary Rogers that owns her business. It is even the city is experiencing these problems with the insurance companies. So what's going to happen with that? An extra $6 million. Where is that going to come from? Taxes. Taxes are going to go up because the insurance companies aren't playing ball. And so, there's so many different parts to this. If you want to just also recap the last bit of what you said, then I can come back to it. But I'm so passionate about the insurance companies that have literally let down all of these people, you know?
Yeah, literally did not do what insurance is for and why we pay into it. And I don't think it's any surprise that insurance companies are doing this. Thankfully, they're not sponsoring any of this, and I hate them too. So, but I was just, wondering. So, if you had that magic crystal ball and you could solve all the problems here, how would you have protected businesses better? Like, what would you have done that the government didn't do to protect them kind of in the past as we moved into this point? And like, what would you put and do moving forward? Sound like I'm asking like as if you're a politician, like, what are your policies on? But, just so people understand like what we can do to conceivably help small business, withstand everything that's happening.
Sure. So, and it's a great question. So number one, all of the different countries around the world have done different things, right? The United States have done different things. Sweden was no lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
They went for the herd immunity. I don't think I'm for that. I'm not that far on that side of things. I think the government did the right thing by shutting us down. And I think what we have to do is we have to look at the country of Denmark, where they implemented something. You can find it online on KPMG's website as well too, called the freezer method. So what they did was they took all small businesses in Denmark and they put them in the freezer. They closed the door and they covered operating expenses. You couldn't make any money. You couldn't, but basically they covered all of your op costs. So I think that could have been better looked at. I think everything that kind of almost comes back to the sliding scale of things. I have a friend of mine and she was devastated because she owns a store that was mandated closed, and people were going to the big box stores and they were saying, "Oh, do you have balloons? Oh, do you have this?" And she actually went into Walmart and there was a piñata hanging there. She owns a party store. And it was the same piñata that she was selling, but she was closed, but Walmart was allowed to remain open. So Loblaws, bless them, they, once people start asking any business enough, "Hey, do you carry this?" We all get it. If you want a prime example, we got enough calls from mannequins for people doing trade shows and they want to put clothes on them that we bought mannequins. And so Loblaws actually had an online ad saying, "We now carry your non-essential essentials." And so they knew exactly what was going on. They took advantage of it. And then, listen, small business would have done the same thing over a box store. But the problem is that the regulations put us in a position where we couldn't open. So, I would have done probably some sort of freezer method. I would have definitely had everything on a sliding scale. I think the CERB program should have been on a sliding scale. Now, Ryan, think about this for a second. If you're on EI, you can work X amount and then your EI gets cut back. So the CERB program, where it was $2,000, and at one point if you made $1 over, you were out. They claw back your $2,000. If then they came in, they said, "Okay, well, you can make up to $1,000. But if you made 1,001, they would take back the 2,000. And so people on minimum wage, and I'm talking about youth, I get it that an adult with family obligations, but minimum wage is designed as a starting employment spot for, young people that are getting into the workforce. They figured it out that if they worked 17 hours a week times $14 an hour, works out to $238. Then if you take that and you multiply it by 4 for the month, it works out to just shy of $960. So all these people were only willing to work 17 hours a week. They wouldn't work any more than that because they would lose their $2,000. So like EI, it should have all been on a sliding scale. The more money you make, the less you make on the CERB, and it would encourage people to get back to work. Right now, a lot of people they're like, "I'll wait till the CERB's over." And the crazy thing too is talking about restaurants and what's coming next. Dude, we are a month away 2 months at the most of non-dining outside temperatures. How's this going to work for everybody? Where you can only have 50 people inside, but Costco, it's, you know, if you own a restaurant that has 5,000 square feet, it's a big restaurant, versus one that has 100 square feet, you can have up to 50 people inside. That's the law. But the thing is that Costco, you know, it doesn't matter how many people are in. And I get it, that's based on square footage as well, too. But the thing is, though, is that they come out with these little tiny, you know, gummy bears, and we're like, ooh, gummy bear. But then it stops at some point, right? So
that's a good point. Yeah, you're right. Like, why does you can only have 25 people in the restaurant, but 1,000 people in the store? You know, I go to Walmart now, and you don't even have to line up anymore. Like, people just roll right in, and it creates that, like you said, that double standard of what's fair and what's right. I did want to touch on something, because I always love to play a devil's advocate type thing, because one of the common arguments with that, well, you know, why should people go back to work if, you know, businesses aren't willing to, you know, match that $2,000 that the CERB is getting it, right? Like, businesses should be paying that if they want their employees back. Like, that's what they've deemed a livable wage. I'm just curious. I don't know if that's ever been brought up to you, or if you kind of have a response to that type of the argument, but it's one I see a lot, and one particularly from people around my age.
Okay, so $2,000 is, in my opinion, not even a livable wage, right?
Yeah, it's tight.
24 grand a year. I don't think anybody is. That's not what we're aspiring to. That's not going to get you a weekend away in Toronto. You know, your rent, your food, your kids, whatever the case is. But I would say this. I would say small business would be more open to this discussion if it wasn't a pandemic and our numbers weren't down 92%, right. 50%, 70%. Today, I get it. That's an ask. And I think that's something that if you get the right person, we'll use the word lobbying. We get the right person lobbying for that. Even a young person, like, if you've never been involved before, it's never too late to start. So, you know, the thing is that if that interest group can organize themselves, then yeah, sure, I'm all for it. The only thing is right now, small business doesn't have, in some cases, enough money to bring the entire staff back. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that it's something that will be viable anyways, my opinion, for probably a year.
Yeah.
But I'm not against it.
It's very interesting that you would say if people get involved in government, that they can make change. I don't know if people realize that. I think they just would rather tweet obscene things at their ministers, and hopefully they just listen.
That gets you nowhere. And, you know, I had an MP DMing me on Twitter this morning because she knows that the response she's going to get is going to be professional, courteous. You know, I think there was a thing that you probably saw online too that Mike Tyson said, where social media has made people way too comfortable saying whatever they want without getting punched in the face, right? So that's pretty much where that's at. So
yeah. Before I let you go, how can, you know, besides someone like me who works in the media as a podcast, can maybe help get the message out a little bit, but like your average day person who wants their favorite restaurant to succeed, they want their favorite store to, you know, be successful. How can we help other than just, you know, purchasing or supporting you financially? Like, how can we help further along the cause of business? How can we get involved beyond just the power of our dollar?
Great question. So review our businesses online. If you've had a great experience, you know, a lot of people just type in, you know, tacos Ottawa, and then they will see the restaurants that are listed that sell tacos. It's like, if you've been there, go on and review it. And you know, if you haven't had a good experience, let's just say that's the case, please don't write a review. Call us and we'll fix the problem. We'll have you back. We'll make it right. Share things that we post on social media so other people that may not be aware that we exist. These are all things that don't cost anything. Marketing at the end of the day is all about creating awareness and turning that awareness into sales and demand. And we need our fans of our businesses to be our biggest marketers and just help us create more awareness that we still exist.
So it's a good point, and something I bring up often because, would I like my podcast to be a business one day? Yes. Is it there? No. Yet, hopefully. But
it will get it, man. This has been amazing. I
even, working in radio, working marketing, working with charities, all these different things, talking with business owners, like I've come to the conclusion that if you love something, like you have to participate in the brand or in that type of thing, or else it won't sustain, whether that's your favorite business or your favorite radio station or your favorite musician or your favorite, YouTuber, whatever it is, whatever your favorite thing is. If you don't participate actively, there's a very strong chance that it will eventually go away. And then that's when you get the people who go like, oh, I can't believe you made the chamber, fuck you, get all angry and, can't believe it that this thing's now gone away. But like, you never, there's like you said, there's free ways you can help. And you have to actively participate in things that you enjoy for it to succeed. Basically, that's the biggest thing I've learned.
100%. And, here's the thing. If we all do go away, small businesses, there's going to be no one left to support your child's sports team. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be able to afford to put children into hockey and dance lessons and give them all these wonderful things that we had as kids. And so if you want to see that perspective, stay. And because, I haven't seen a Nepean House League hockey team called, the Nepean Walmarts. I haven't seen them called, the Ottawa West Costco's. We rely on small business to support our interests and what we want to do and our families. And I think a lot of times it may go slightly unnoticed that somebody out of their own pocket essentially, said, I'll sponsor your hockey team and everything this year, your soccer team or basketball or dance or whatever. And so I think we all have a responsibility to make sure that small business survives so we can just keep supporting those in our community.
Absolutely. So lastly, I know this being September 1st, I know you have a meeting with the city of Ottawa. What's kind of next on your schedule with whether it's meetings or progressing this cause?
Sure. So Thursday at 3, I am meeting with the mayor and 4 other city councilors and Ottawa small business owners. And, the thing is too, right, is that some people aren't totally sure, and no fault of their own, because more people have been involved now, I think, following politics than ever before. What's a municipal issue? What's a provincial issue? What's a federal issue? So the municipality laws or municipal laws don't really allow the city to get involved with funding and bailouts and resources. But again, it's coming down to like the opposition. I'm going to lean on the mayor to reach out to his contacts at the Fed and the province and say, listen, this is what we're hearing from Ottawa small business owners. This is what they need. This is the crisis situation or the tipping point, and go from there. And then, I actually, again, not being involved in politics before, I was asked to submit a brief to the Standing Committee on Finance for the 2021 pre-budgetary consultations, which I did. I sent that to the House of Commons, and so they are saying that I'll probably be called to testify again. And I have a brief into the Premier's office. I've heard from several people that the Premier's wanted to meet with me, Premier Ford for the people that aren't from Ontario. And so I'm just waiting to hear back. I've got all of my notes in. I know that the Premier is overloaded with school right now. And with the 4 teachers unions issuing a legal challenge against the back to school plan. So I'm sure I'm not going to hear from the Premier for a little bit. But again, I have a roundtable coming up with Joel Harden the Ottawa Centre MPP. And, we're just going to keep trying to push this message as long as we can.
Yeah. Well, man, it is it's been incredible to follow this whole thing, especially for someone who doesn't completely understand it, but to see all your posts, your videos, it's been really cool. And it's been fascinating talking to you and learning a little bit more about this subject. So I really appreciate your time.
Amazing, man. This has been awesome. I've done a lot of these, man, and this one's been awesome. I love it. That's
what I love about podcasts. Off script, you can go on as long as you want. There's not really, that kind of line you have to toe. So no, it's been great. Really fascinating. I think a lot of people are going to pick up a lot. And I really wanted to make sure people understood the value of small business. Because like I said, right off the top, one of the first things I mentioned when COVID started is, I'm worried about the virus. I'm worried about my family, but I am extremely concerned about the economic impacts and the mental health implications that will follow after this virus. We're going to be dealing with it for a long, long time, the impacts.
We are.
And it's scary. So we should all be informed and understand what's at stake. If people want to follow you, I always give people a chance to get their plugs in, whether it's your op-eds, your website. Where can people check out some of your stuff?
Sure. So on Twitter, it's at Mike Wood Ottawa. I do have a small business advocacy page on Facebook, which is at Mike Wood Ottawa. And I think for LinkedIn, you have to double check, but I'm pretty sure I went with Michael Wood for Michael Wood Ottawa. Or Ottawa Michael Wood, something along that line for LinkedIn. I thought maybe I better say the full name on that platform, right? But, on Thursday, we're going to be live streaming the meeting with myself and the mayor and the city councilors. Okay. So, people can friend me on Facebook. I'm close to 5,000, so they'll cut me off. But, I'm here. I'm here to support and do whatever I can.
Awesome. Well, again, appreciate it. Best of luck. Get some sleep.
Thank you, man.
But appreciate it. Be good out there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brian.
You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.